Death is what lends gravity to war, and the Clone Wars, being the largest galactic war in history to that point, involved quite a bit of it. The clone troopers who fought for the Galactic Republic faced death on the battlefields of the conflict on a daily basis, and a good many of them experienced it as well. But not all causes of death were created equal. Some were relatively quick and painless, like getting vaporized by a turbolaser blast, but others were far more excruciating, and in this video, we're going to list out the 5 worst ways for a clone to die.
Attention, Sergeant on deck!
First up, we have the most obvious way to die in battle, getting shot. Being hit by a blaster bolt was not a pleasant experience, and it often led to a slow and agonizing death. Sure, getting shot clean through the head would kill a clone outright in most cases, but clean shots were a rare thing, and most clones who died from blaster wounds didn't die instantly. If you know anything about what it's like to die from bullet wounds, just imagine that, but with a lot more damage and a lot more pain. When a blaster bolt struck a target, it caused a massive transfer of kinetic energy and a rapid increase in heat. Upon hitting an organic being, the average blaster bolt would burn a hole clean through them, and it would also cause huge amounts of damage to the surrounding tissue. Any bodily fluids near the blaster wound would evaporate on contact, and since steam takes up more space than liquid, the results would be catastrophic. Blood vessels, lymph nodes, and the like would explode, shredding the surrounding tissue in the process, while other kinds of tissue would basically be microwaved by the bolt's passage. All of the above is quite painful, and there are a plethora of ways in which that sort of damage could cause death slowly and agonizingly. Worse, it could be very difficult for field medics to analyze exactly what kind of damage blaster bolts did to their victims, and so it was a struggle for them just to make the end a little easier. Most clones who died of blaster wounds spent a good while lying on the ground in agony, with no one to help them, no chance of survival, and no way to dull the pain. Do you know what's worse than having some of your insides flash cooked? Having all of your insides liquefied, of course. That, unfortunately, was what happened to anyone with the misfortune to get shot by a Geonosian type sonic weapon. As we'll discuss again later in this video, the Geonosians were quite brutal people, and their weaponry was fairly brutal in turn. They killed rather quickly, unlike with blaster bolts, but they were dramatically more painful. This wasn't what Geonosian sonic weapons were designed for, however. The Geonosian preference for sonic weaponry over blasters was more of a practical choice, one necessitated by the constant underground warfare Geonosian hives engaged in. The deep catacomb networks of Geonosis were designed to be as stable as possible, but blasters and similar types of weaponry were nonetheless liable to cause tunnel collapses, which the Geonosians always tried to avoid. As a result, they developed weapons that concentrated sonic energy into spheres, which would dissipate harmlessly against hard targets, like cavern walls, but would cause massive amounts of internal damage for organic targets. When one of these sonic energy spheres struck an organic target, the sonic energy would be released into the target. The resultant vibrations would cause organs to liquefy, which obviously was always fatal. To make matters worse, this kind of damage was untreatable, because, well, it's not like you can just stick organ group in a freezer and come out with the replacement or something. Dying of a sonic blast was a uniquely unpleasant process, as you can probably imagine. Here's how it felt for Captain Dine of the Republic Judicial Forces, as described in James Luceno's Labyrinth of Evil. He felt himself go airborne and crash into the wall, and his insides turned spongy. He was vaguely aware of being slumped against the wall in a position that didn't come naturally to a human being. It was as if every bone in his body had been made pliant. The light was either red or tinted so by the blood that was filling his ruptured eyeballs. Next up, we have environmental deaths, which is to say stuff like getting eaten by Acklay on Felucia or dying of dehydration on Praesitlin. The nature of these causes varied wildly, of course, but as none of them are explored in sufficient detail to get their own entry, and several are worthy of inclusion of this list, here we are. Certain planets, most notably Felucia, had extremely hostile environments. which caused their fair share of deaths for the clones sent there. By and large, environmental deaths were slow and painful in their own ways. They also claimed a sizable number of clone lives. Of the clones who fought in the Battle of Pre-Sitlin, for example, 2% died of dehydration, which, while mundane, is an excruciating way to die. Wildlife, of course, was another ever-present danger. Practically every planet had some sort of vicious apex predator, and they varied wildly in how big they were, how they killed you, and why they killed you. Many a clone was killed by vicious wild creatures on campaigns during the Clone Wars, with their killers ranging from the Rancors of Dathomir and the Vixus of Umbara to the Gundarks of Venkor and the Acklays of Felucia and Vendaxa. But perhaps worst of all environmental causes of death were those that fit neither of the above categories. Things like parasites, flesh-eating diseases, and other wholly alien ways to die. While those may not have been all the more painful or excruciating than any of our prior examples, they would have been worse for dying clones because of the horror that comes with their unfamiliarity. Things like the flesh-eating diseases of Felucia would have been wholly alien to the clone troopers who died from them. A truly horrifying thing. Speaking of horror, let's talk about space. Getting sucked out into space and dying in a vacuum wasn't all the more painful than our prior items on this list, though it was certainly painful in its own right. Many clones died from getting sucked out into space, usually thanks to hull breaches during naval battles. If a clone was unlucky enough to be one of them, the water in their skin and blood would have vaporized, their body would have swelled up like a balloon, and their lungs would have collapsed, killing them somewhere along the way. The reason we've put dying in space this high on the list, however, is because of how horrifying dying that way would be. Let's set the pain and the fact that it would be quick aside for a second. As a clone died out in the void, they'd get to experience true nothingness, a nothingness that would surround and suffocate them. They'd be uniquely and horribly alone in the void, as that void sucked the life out of them. This may be a bit subjective, but in our book, there's nothing, absolutely nothing more terrifying than that. But by far the worst way to die for a clone was to die as a prisoner of war. Whether they were carted off by hungry Geonosian warriors during a skirmish, or dragged from a blown out AT-AT by Asajj Ventress for questioning, any clone who got captured could expect as slow and as painful a death as was humanly possible. By and large, the CIS military wasn't all that humane to its prisoners. Many separatist species, like the Geonosians, had no moral qualms with just picking up clones and carrying them off to be made into dinner. Dooku's Dark Acolytes and most separatist military figures, furthermore, were quite merciless, if not outright sadistic in their own ways. It didn't help matters that clones were viewed as little more than living droids by many people, doubtlessly including the people who would have held them prisoner. Of course, it wouldn't have made a difference in many cases, as any clone taken prisoner for information would have been delivered to the Confederacy's sadistic interrogators, who had no respect for life in any case. Many of them enjoyed torture for torture's sake and would have led clones to painful deaths just for the fun of it. The ways a clone could die in prison varied wildly from where they would be held. Many sites like Stygian Prime and the brigs of most warships held simple electric torture fields, which manipulated the nerve system to cause pain to whatever degree the torturer wanted, pain that could easily be lethal. In the dungeons of Asajj Ventress on Ratatak, prisoners would be subjected to laceration, muscle magnets, and Sith torture masks, which would slowly sap away the will and energy of the victim. The interrogators in the Citadel on Lola Sayu were known to remove body parts, like eyes, fingers, and possibly even limbs, one by one. The possibilities were endless, and they were dreadful across the board. So, those were our top 5 worst ways for a clone to die during the Clone Wars. But what do you think? Did we miss anything? Feel free to post your thoughts in the comments section below. And just before you go guys, make sure you check out our wider community at our main GEETSLY'S Discord, where you can chat to myself and other Star Wars fans, and our GEETSLY'S Gaming Network and Gary's Mod, where you can play Star Wars roleplay with other Star Wars gamers. So make sure you check those out in the description below. Anyways guys, as always, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.